Well, Sally, we're focusing on the cost of living still. It's part of the theme very much so. But a broader look at some of the other implications that are having an impact on South Africa's economic outlook here. So we've got a chief economist, Lulu Krugel, who joins me now to talk about some of the issues or the headwinds that are being faced in South Africa's economy. And I mean, PwC did quite a nice piece around the opportunities that exist with exporting and then the disruptions by importing. We've spoken about this for months now, Lulu. Major disruptions to supply chains globally, and South Africa not remaining or being excluded there.
Good evening, Rafiwa. Yes, absolutely. Unfortunately, a lot of the supply chain disruptions that we've seen over the last couple of months and, you know, during COVID has been exacerbated by what has been happening in South Africa and Eastern Europe, the floods in KZN, the war between Russia and Ukraine, all of those creating pressures. And then, of course, combined with all of that, we also have load shedding. So both locally and internationally, we are seeing a lot of pressure on supply chain and availability of products, and also in particular food, if you look at food products, and that has put pressure on the prices of these commodities as well. I think there's not a single South African that can say that they haven't picked up over the last couple of months how much the cost of a basic basket of foods have been increasing.
Now, and I'm glad you bring up the issue of food, because I was going to ask you about the implications of these disruptions on South Africa's food inflation. So we are seeing the disruptions are one thing, but the economy that we are currently in as well is not helping. So what are your thoughts in terms of how long South Africans, if you could even gauge, are going to have to deal with the ever-rising prices of food items?
It is almost impossible at this point in time to say. I think the challenge that we are sitting with is that it takes time to look at alternatives. If you look at the increased cost of food, it comes from two places. On the one hand, there's the increased cost of the commodities themselves, and we know now, and I didn't realize that before this war, but how much of our wheat is actually coming from Ukraine, for example. So there's that on the one hand, and then the input costs, if you look at fuel prices, etc., where we will also see we're also seeing the increased pressures. So honestly, we don't know at this point in time, and that makes it so difficult. But the good news is we are not, as South Africans, alone in this situation, and everybody globally is looking at solutions and ways in which we can manage this, in which we can manage food prices, in which we can manage fuel prices, etc. But the bottom line is it's not easy to replace supply of some of these products, and therefore it makes it so difficult for us to manage the situation.
The report does indeed speak about creating supply chain resilience during all of this disruption that we're seeing. And I was just wondering, as you were giving your answer just now, would bolstering our local sectors like manufacturing and the like help somewhat to create a bit of that resilience? And I wonder how difficult that in itself would be because of the blackouts that we are getting almost on a weekly basis now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's interesting, at the beginning of COVID, everybody was saying we need to diversify supply chains. And I've been speaking to companies and to clients of PwC to say, you know, to what extent have you been able to do it? And a lot of them are saying that they have not been able to. They've not been able to because of the cost, of the availability of supply, or, you know, a lot of focus on just surviving COVID-19 and the impact of that. So that diversification has not happened everywhere and to the extent that we thought it would. But I think we've also been surprised by how quickly another set of disruptions have come. But the good news again is that companies are thinking about what can we do to bolster our own supply. There's a lot of things that we can produce locally. And also, if you look at load shedding, they are looking at alternatives to actually mitigate the impact of that.
No, absolutely. Lulu Krugel, as always, thank you very much for your time this evening. That is PwC's chief economist speaking to us about those disruptions we've seen in supply chains globally and the implications that have had not just on various other products, but on food inflation for us here in South Africa as well.